So welcome. We are here at the Library of Congress on the stage of the Coolidge Auditorium. It's July 25th, 2019, and I'm here with the members of the Cedric Watson Trio, who just played a concert here for the American Folklife Center. The members of the trio are Desiree Champagne, Chris Stafford, and Cedric Watson in the middle. So we're going to talk to them about their music and Cajun-Creole culture and South Louisiana culture in general. So I guess we'll start with kind of the hard question, because I know Cedric has been outspoken about this on his website and other places. The question of Cajun, Creole, Zydeco, all of these names that get applied to this music. What's your take on that, on what the genre is and how it's called by most people?
Well, in general, collectively it's all Louisiana French music is what it's all, it all comes from the same roots and everything. But somewhere in the history of this music, because of it being the racially segregated South, Cajun music is more marketed towards the white American, so it's more mixed with blues, mixed with the country and things like that. Whereas Zydeco or Black Creole music is more catering towards the African Americans, which is going to be like R&B, what Black people listen to the most. So somewhere down the line, like the 50s or something like that, it changed over.
Changed over to being...
they were playing more similar styles of music.
So you're saying that there was kind of a divide that suddenly occurred. Is that what you mean?
Because it was more like sold to the outside or sold to people. So you had to come up with like, this is for us and this is for them and this is, that's how it worked.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to elaborate on that. Like I teach kids, and when I teach them, I tell them the same thing. There are the differences and variances in it. And I always explain to them, just think if Cajun, Creole, and Zydeco were people. And I always keep this part to where it's together. I say if Cajun and Creole had a baby, it would be Zydeco. Without Cajun and Creole, that wouldn't be Zydeco. So I always make that known. Cajun and Creole, you're still kind of singing in French, but most Zydeco players, they'll sing in English and a little bit of French in there.
Mm-hmm. Great, thanks. So I'll direct some questions to each of you kind of individually, just in terms of personal history. So Cedric, coming from the Houston area, from Texas, how did you get involved in roots music? It wasn't the normal thing for a person your age, I guess.
Well, Zydeco, or the more modern version of Zydeco, you'll find a lot of that in Houston. Probably just as much as you're going to find around Lafayette and Opelousas. But when it comes to the old traditional folklore style, of la-la music or old Cajun music, you're gonna hear more of that in the motherland, which is Louisiana. Mm-hmm. So growing up, every weekend I heard Zydeco on the radio when my family would get together. And another thing is my family had trail rides. We'd all get together and ride horses and stuff, and some people on wagons. And we'd go from one town to another, the next town over, which was Sunnyside from San Felipe. Mm-hmm. And Zydeco and R&B and old school I want to say step and strut, but it's actually called swing out.
Swing out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, swing out. Stuff like that, that's what we heard. A little country in the mix too, but that's what we heard at our trail rides. So that's how I got into Zydeco, just through like family things.
And you did eventually move to Louisiana.
Yes, I moved there when I was 20 years old. Mm-hmm. And where I moved, luckily, was in like the heart of like where a lot of these melodies and this music is coming from. It was just north of Eunice, in a little area called Durald. And I stayed there with the Ardoin family, who embraced me and kind of like shared a lot of their different stuff and history and songs and just different things with me, showed me around. And they would speak French half of the time with each other. So I was really immersed in it whenever I moved over. Because I know that in my, whenever they were reading about my history or whatever, they said Lafayette. Well, that was actually later. Mm-hmm. So where I started off it was actually deeper in the heart of where the music was from.
Sure. And how did you end up taking up button accordion and fiddle? Those are the sort of instruments that,
I started
play
playing
today.
Fiddle. I always did want to play fiddle since the age of 13. And but my grandma wanted me to play guitar. Mm-hmm. She wanted me to be like more of a bluesy kind of cat. and I wanted to be more of a bluesy kind of cat on that. So, so I was always like, I want to play fiddle, and she was like, well, I found you a guitar. You know, she probably said guitar, but I found you a guitar, and I want you to learn a few songs on here first, just to get you familiar with music and the ears and everything. So she got me some Cajun and Creole music. She got me some blues and different things, and she just gave me some things to listen to. And I just learned the chords on it pretty quick. So my ear got caught up with all that stuff like fast because of playing guitar, the chords. And then I went ahead and showed that off a little bit to her and stuff. And I found a fiddle, it was a Palatino in the Musician's Friends magazine. And it was $75 on some kind of like Christmas special. So she ordered it for me. And I just remember like running down to the post office, and I grabbed it and went home and sat on the porch and just like, I tuned it up like a guitar. So the way I was learning, it was tuned wrong, but I learned some tunes and everything. But then after about like 7 months into it, one of my cousins that lived in College Station, she actually took classical music and knew how to tune a violin the right way. So she took my violin and played a little bit. She's like, what? She couldn't play anything that she knew. So she was more like this, and she tuned it and showed me, and I was just like, whoa. I had to start over.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you ever heard of a Creole fiddler named Edward Poulard, but he's originally from Eunice. He's been living in Beaumont since he was a kid. And in Beaumont, there's a lot of Creole people there. And Edward Poulard, a friend of mine named J.B. Adams in Houston, who did a Zydeco show called Zydeco et Pasale, he introduced me to Edward. They introduced me to most of the musicians in Louisiana who I'm still friends with to this day. And older people like Goldman Thibodeau, they were still playing traditional music that dated back since before the 50s and stuff. And that's how I got into, really into it with the fiddle. Because once I started playing and jamming with a lot of people, kind of everybody wanted me to kind of sit in with the band, especially the Zydeco cats, because it was missing in the Zydeco. There wasn't many black fiddlers. I mean, when I came around playing the fiddle, that was only just like me and DeJong Garnier and Ed Poulard, who were out there playing in front of people. Right. Now, they had a lot of old people that were still sitting around the house and stuff, and they could play fiddle. Like, I met this one dude named Roosevelt Richard. He must have been like 100 and some years old. He was very old, like ancient. He looked like a skeleton with skin. Like, he was so old, like ancient. So his hand was chopped off, like from here where his knuckles is or whatever, all the way across there. So that was all just like this. And what he would do is stick his nub between the hair of the fiddle and the bow, and he played fiddle, but he still played. And he was back in the days whenever Amadei and all those guys, the forefathers, were playing. So they had some old fiddlers around, but as far as in the Afro-Creole people, there was no one really doing it. So one of my main goals was with the fiddle and moving to Louisiana was to maybe somehow make it look like, or show them what they've been missing or what they kind of like let go of, and hopefully resurrect it, And a few people actually did start playing fiddle who didn't play at first, from that. Great. So it worked a little bit, but not as much as I wanted it to. So I was playing with the Ponley Boys for some years, and we all used to live together in the same house. And the majority of everybody in the band played a little bit of accordion, if not a lot. The majority of everyone played accordion to some extent, is what I'm trying to say. So I couldn't help but really want to start playing more accordion and learn more of that, because I already did kind of mess around with it, but living with them, I couldn't help but learn. Right. All the people that played, because 3 of the guys in the band actually played pretty well on accordion, like very well accomplished. Whereas but then a couple of us didn't really have accordion down. So I learned from being around accordionists all the time. And playing fiddle on the right-hand side of the accordion is, I can look at them and kind of guess what they're about to do, and that's the way I would play in order to make it sound good when we played together. Right. And somehow it just all kind of worked out. But then after playing the little single row accordion, which is the traditional one, I started getting into a lot of Zydeco sounds that were more it was just unique. It's something that kind of went extinct, the double row accordion. And that's when I started playing the double row, based off of some old Arhuli records of Zydeco in the early years. And
that's a diatonic instrument?
It's just that you can reach more blues notes in there. And you can play, it's almost like 2 accordions in one, actually, because you can play on the G accordion or the C accordion, which is more standard for Cajun music. Okay, so what I was trying to get to was this. I noticed that I knew a lot of tunes on the fiddle, my repertoire or whatever, but my creativity or writing songs was actually on the accordion. So one of my, he's like one of my heroes in Cajun music. His name is Michael Doucet. He's the one that encouraged me to keep writing songs on the double row accordion. So that's what I did.
All right. Well, we're going to take a little side trip because there's one instrument that you play that you don't play in this group, but it's the banjo. And just wondering how you came to play, because I was chatting with the members of Our Native Daughters yesterday, and your name came up as someone that they like to listen to when you used to play the banjo.
Our Native Daughters?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's good to know, because I always saw myself as kind of like I mean, I play banjo, and it's definitely the songs being played, and you can hear and distinguish that melody, yeah, he's playing banjo. But I never thought of myself as much as I never thought of myself as a really great banjo player. So, but what got me into the banjo was back in the days when I played with the Ponley Boys, one of those last years or 2 years within there, but we played at a festival called Merle Fest. And I went to this tent, and they were showing this film on the origins of the banjo, like where it was from. I already knew that it came from Africa and everything because I learned this before that. But when I saw this documentary they showed, it hit me. And I say, I'm not leaving this festival without a banjo. So I went ahead and got me one. And Kelly, who plays with him in a band called Foot Follet, and her friend Emma, they started me on the banjo. And then from there, I just started teaching myself. Well, and then also this fisherman from Alaska. Those are the three people that started me on the banjo.
All right.
And ever since then, I've just been obsessed with it, like get into like minstrel tunes and things. And there's this website I get on. They have all these like 1800s like pop chart hits and these 1800 songs that people were doing back then. Jimmy Crack Corn, all these good tunes.
Right.
So I started learning those tunes instead of just the old time and hillbilly kind of songs. And man, I love the banjo. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, and you play a gourd banjo as well, which is kind of unusual. Yeah.
I love it. Because it doesn't have that twang kind of like metal sound with the metal strings. It has that more of what it probably sound like, you know, the original banjo.
Right.
It's more mellow, harpish.
All right. Well, thanks. Let's talk to Desiree for a little bit about your percussion playing. So how did you get your start as a musician?
Percussion wasn't it. I actually started off playing the flute in 5th grade. But starting off with that, I met Cedric while we were in college and was doing a open mic night on the guitar at this pizza place. And he saw me and came up to me after I played and asked if I would collaborate with him at some point. And I told him, yeah, I would be interested. And 2 years later, we got connected finally, and we sat down, just me and him, and played. He played accordion, and I did something on the washboard, just filling it out. And from that, like, it sounded really good, just me and him. I was impressed. I was like, oh, it does sound good. So I decided to kind of go with it, give it a try. And then he did that with the full band. He kept it like one-on-one. We didn't do a full band practice until probably the 2nd month of us all rehearsing. And then finally, we all got together, and it was there immediately just because of the one-on-ones. We all sounded good, so from that point on, I was in it.
Mm-hmm. Great, and you know, in the group you play both trottoir and triangle.
Yes.
And it's kind of funny because we were talking about the sort of artificial divide between Cajun music and Creole music, and I think there really is a perception among most people that the triangle is pretty much a Cajun instrument and the rub board is pretty much a Creole or Zydeco instrument.
Yes.
So what's your take on that?
Same exact take. I explain that to the kids all the time. I say the exact same thing. I say most of the time in Cajun music, you'll see the triangle, and most of the time in Creole, you'll see either the washboard or the triangle, and then most of the time in Zydeco, you'll just see the washboard.
Yeah. Does that go back a long way, do you think, or is it more modern?
I think the washboard may be just a little more modern towards introducing itself maybe in a little bit of Cajun music. Like you might see a Cajun band every now and then with a little washboard in it, but I think the triangle and the washboard has always been there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool. So Chris, let's talk to you a little bit. How did you get your start as a Cajun-Creole musician?
Well, I was, I think, 8 years old, very, very interested in music, and a lot of my family liked to listen to Cajun music, and I just always kind of had a super big interest and a pretty good ear ever since I was a little kid, you know, and was very interested in the accordion. My uncle had one, let me borrow it, started kind of taking lessons from Steve Riley for a while, and then eventually learned on my own by ear, and then kind of started playing a bunch of different instruments after that.
Great.
Rest is history, I guess.
Yeah, and so we were reminiscing a little before the interview that I actually first met you, I guess it was 13 years ago when you came here to the Library of Congress, and the reason for that was a research visit because some of your family had been recorded by Alan Lomax in 1934. So mention your great uncle, if you would.
Yeah, I don't specifically know the details probably as well as my bandmate Josh Caffrey has researched the Lomax recordings extensively and written about it and everything, and he has told me exactly how I'm related to those people, but I can't particularly recall. Jesse Stafford, I think, and anyway, they were singing in French on those recordings. One of the songs being Je m'endors, I think.
Yeah.
Which actually my band Faux Follet had recorded, but I hadn't really realized that I was somehow related to the people that had, you know, it's kind of found out later, you know.
Yeah, and it's interesting because there aren't many field recordings of that song. I think there's one other song that's kind of related.
Yeah.
So it really is kind of uniquely related to that field recording, and you even unconsciously were working with your own family's
Exactly.
material,
I had first heard that song from hearing Michael Duse do it with Beausoleil.
Right. They did a great waltz
Right.
version. Yeah.
So, you know, small world, go figure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one thing that I noticed in listening to your concert today was that Pas Janvier is very close, the tune to Je m'endors.
It is similar, yeah.
Yeah, is it, do you think it's a related?
I don't know.
Yeah.
It could be. I mean, probably, just as old maybe.
That's probably what it is.
They're kind of like contemporary songs.
Yeah.
Like back in those days, they probably played more minor kind of related songs than what they do today.
Yeah, you don't really hear songs in minor keys that much anymore because usually the accordion has a difficult time playing those types of melodies. The accordion more lends itself to major key kind of music.
That makes sense. So so the fiddle was the driving force back then, and you got
I think
those minor.
before the accordion, a lot of the French music in Louisiana was very a lot more varied and had a lot more variety. I think the accordion kind of standardized it into waltzes, two steps, and mostly all in major keys. Just a few chords, you know.
Great.
Yeah.
So tell us a little about Faux Follet, the band that you mentioned that you play with.
Yeah, so I started playing really young, like I mentioned earlier, and I was also in the French immersion programs in school. In Lafayette Parish Public Schools, we have French immersion, so you basically go and start in kindergarten to just speak to you in French, and you learn that way. So I was learning French and, you know, able to play accordion and sing in French and stuff, and my younger brother Michael started playing drums around the same time, so we started doing that, and then kind of met other people our age, oddly enough, at that very young age that were also interested in French and stuff because of the program in school, you know, and kind of started a little band, and then eventually kind of started getting good and made some records, and I'm really the only original member left now, but so we're about 20 years into it now. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
So how did you get connected with Cedric?
I met Cedric. I remember meeting you at, I think, the Folk Roots Dewey Balfa camp.
When I played with Boisek,
Yeah.
I was just standing there, and your mom come grab me by the wrist and like pulled me up on stage. I didn't even know I was supposed to be playing with Boisek at all. I think it was at the moment.
Really?
Yeah.
And this was before the Pine Leaf Boys.
Yeah, it was before then.
Yeah. I remember seeing you
I was still living in Texas.
playing with Boisek.
So did you know the Audouin family by then? Or?
I knew of them and their music. In Dexter, I'd already been playing with him, Boisek's son. But I was just like, I was coming there to see Boisek play, and then his mom come grab me, Lisa, and to this day, she's like a mother to me, you know? She come grab me and just like, you gotta play with this man. You gotta play with him. And she put me up there, and I'm like sitting there playing with them, and I seen them before, like in like documentaries or even just on the internet and stuff. And
Yeah, explain a little who Boisek Eldouin was, just because of the video, so people know.
Boisek is like I used to know exactly, but I want to say he's the second or third cousin of Amadé Ardouin. Yeah. And Boisek, him and Canary, you know, they used to play together. They put first it was Boisek's son, Lawrence Ardouin, Chris Ardouin's dad, who played fiddle with, it was his son that played fiddle with him. I don't know how it would go, but I know that sometimes it would be like Canary wouldn't play with Boisek, and it would be his son playing fiddle with him. And then, but basically the Ardouin family is like one of the oldest families in Creole music. You know, they've been doing that for a while. So is Canary's dad was one of the best accordion players too at the time. And I kind of got to know all of them when I started playing with Dexter, and just got to meet everybody through each other and everything.
Right, so that's Canray Fontenot. Yeah, all right.
He was one of my biggest influences on the fiddle. Him and Dennis McGee and Bebe Carrière.
Yeah, those Dennis McGee recordings are amazing too. Yeah,
It's haunting.
Yeah, all right. So, you guys eventually ended up forming a trio, and what's the concept behind the Cedric Watson Trio?
I didn't even give it that name, but really, I really didn't. I would have called it Creole Trio or something.
Yeah.
But really, it's just like whenever we don't play with our band or anything, the whole band, I just basically like try to call together, and it's always going to be Desiree, you know, when it comes to the percussions and everything. And Chris, you know, in the band, everyday band, Cedric Watson, Cajun-Creole, you know, he would play. As a matter of fact, I think he was the first drummer. And then from there, that's when I first started playing gigs, you know, by myself. And then it would switch around. People would start, you know, because he's one of the best guitar players you're ever going to hear in Louisiana. Don't ask him that because he ain't going to tell you the song.
You have a concept behind it, though. Like the concept you come up with is la-la. We break it down to like the la-la style that you would go back
maybe I don't
into
understand English as well.
No, just saying.
But the goal is to demonstrate that this music at one time, you know, this is what you had, you know. I mean, and as a matter of fact, how we played big festivals and big dance halls and stuff, at one time it was in a house. And just like with the mountain music, you played for a few people. It wasn't that many people that came to listen. There was a few people at every house dance. And a lot of people didn't even dance. And a lot of people danced by themselves. And they would sit and they would listen and enjoy the songs even. So the words had more meaning back in the older days. But my concept and everything and the whole agenda and goal is to don't let it die, keep it alive, and keep showing people and letting them hear what this music, the roots of it. And we can even play original songs, but still as a trio. And hopefully it'll help in the preservation of it and encourage younger people to want to do it more often.
And so the larger band is Cajun-Creole, is that right?
Cajun-Creole.
And when you play with the trio, are you playing a somewhat different repertoire than you play with the larger group?
Playing probably like 90% to 99% all traditional when I play with a trio. And then with the band, I play like, it used to be to where it was like 80% all of my songs, but now it's more like, because I'm kind of going through a reformation of the band, so I'm probably playing about like 40 to 50% originals now, but eventually to get back to the point to where, and the good thing about us playing the traditional songs right now is that if we ever get back to the point where we're playing predominantly originals, at least we know how to play the traditional songs together really well.
So talk about the importance of African roots to this music.
I mean, without it, it'll still be European.
Yeah.
I mean, without the African roots, it'll still be like dominated by polkas and mazurkas and things like that, and more like European, even the rhythm and the choice of notes, you know. There wouldn't be as much stank on it, I like to call it. There wouldn't be as much like sliding and grit, you know. So I would say that's probably one of the most important contributions to the music, you know, the African influence. I mean, you have to consider too that when blacks came to America, what we call blacks, but Africans, or you know, us, when our ancestors came to America, we didn't have any choice. We couldn't play what we used to play in our own homeland because it was basically, it was it was against the law. So we had to figure out ways to mix like with the sounds of the people that, you know, that owned us. So, and in most cases we played for free. You know, back in them days, blacks were not paid to play music. Right. If you own a musician, you were a lucky slave owner. So they would play whatever they thought probably made them happy, but at the same time, they had to rediscover music again too because they lost what they had. So I think that's how Creole music was born. Mm-hmm. So that's why you hear a lot of songs, they sound very European, but then when it goes to a bridge, it sounds very Africanized or blackish, you know. It's because, you know, it's probably part of how the music came about, you know. And I mean, think about it. You got like American music in general, you hear some similarities in European music, you hear some similarities in Caribbean and African music, but it's not that anymore. These songs were born here. So that's the way I feel to the bottom of my heart. Yeah. Like American music is ours, you know.
You also mentioned an influence that I think a lot of people don't know about in Louisiana as much, which is the Spanish influence when they, you know,
right.
was part of Spain at one point.
Big so Spanish influence.
Yeah. So what do you see as the Spanish contribution?
I mean, just as much as the French, melodically and everything, you know. And also, like, there were a lot of Spanish operas and things like that in Louisiana. Right. And slaves were actually allowed to go to those operas. So, you know, the whole influence of, there's just a bunch of different, I think that the music has that romantic, like songs like Je m'endors, for example, Pas Janvier. A lot of that comes from those romance cultures like French people and Spanish people, you know. So they have a big influence. I mean, even on the, and in the center of France, you find in the middle of France, in the countryside, a lot of old people still roll their tongues on the R's and things like that. But then you also have to consider that one time Louisiana was Spain, but the predominant language was French. Right. So imagine how many kids had Spanish parents, and, you know what I mean? But they spoke French. So a lot of the tongue rolling and a lot of, some words even, if you look at old Spanish compared to old French, put them together, a lot of words match more. Like in French, they might call a goat a chèvre or whatever. But then in Louisiana, they call it cabri. Yeah. You know, or in the New World, shall you say, like if you go to other like islands and stuff like that, they may say cabri or go to French Canada. But then if you look in Spanish, cabrito. Yeah. So the older the languages are, the more that they related. So they had a big influence, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. I mean, look at the last names down there. A lot of them are actually, like, you have Thibodeaux, and that's obvious that they're French, but you have Quibedos, and Quibedos don't exist in no French phone book. You can go to Paris and look up in the queues and try to find it. It don't exist because it was originally Spanish, like Rodrigue. They made it French, but it's Rodriguez, you know? I'm part Spanish too. Yeah. Very proud of that.
Very cool. So when you're not playing with the band, what music are you excited about these days? What are you listening to?
Well, I like...
And that goes for all of you.
I listen to anything that's more like kind of Afro-Caribbean, stuff like that. And then also a lot of like old time music and things like that, you know, country music. Mm-hmm. When I was in high school, I liked death metal. A lot of like, you know, System of a Down, even stuff like that was just hardcore. I don't like hip hop so much, or rap. I just don't feel it. Mm-hmm. You know, it's not my culture. It's not where I'm from. That's about it. African music, Caribbean music, and old time.
Sounds good. Desiree?
I'm pretty much all around. I'll skip around the genres. Mostly do old school R&B, and then I might feel a little gospel after that, and then flip over to a little bit of country, not much. And then I might do a little bit of rap, and then go back to some gospel. And then he introduced me to what is it? Bluegrass, and I wasn't like hip on bluegrass at all. Once I started going to the festivals and actually hanging with the musicians and playing with them, I was like, God, they're awesome. Yeah. So I kind of got into bluegrass a little bit too.
All right.
The cool thing I found with her is she can play anything on a rub board. Even though she started off with the Creole, I mean, on the road, I done seen her at late night jams with Irish people, bluegrass, all that.
That's fun.
You know?
That's great. Yeah. Cool. And Chris?
I listen to like a lot of older country, some western swing, older rock and roll, singer-songwriters, blues, you know, pop music.
So a little of
Cajun,
everything.
Zydeco,
Yeah,
swamp pop. Yeah,
cool.
I like a lot of stuff.
And how does that stuff inform what you all do?
Well, my band Fufole that I play in, it's kind of like a singer-songwriter country band. We write a lot of our own tunes, and some of them are equally as informed by like country music as they are by Cajun music. You know, we're a pretty country-forward Cajun band these days. You know, at least, and a lot of the song structures could be more closely related to like how someone would write like a rock and roll song or a pop song than a Cajun song. Some of them, and then some of them are more like Cajun music. So, yeah. But it all, it all kind of creeps in. I think anything you listen to is gonna kind of get into your subconscious somewhere and kind of appear somewhere.
Yeah, and Cedric, I noticed like you did a Juré song, which is something you don't hear as much with Cajun groups these days. So that's kind of African forward, I guess you could say.
Big time.
Yeah.
I mean, the way I grew up, I mean, for like holidays, even though when I was a kid I didn't like it so much, but now I appreciate it. But my family, for holidays, especially when my great-grandparents are still living, my grandparents and my aunts and my great-aunts and uncles, everybody, they'd be singing these old tunes that was very similar to Juré, these call and response spirituals and stuff. And that's where it touched me, the Juré. Even though a lot of it's called testifying music, and I'm sure there's like other tunes that were not recorded by Lomax, and they were probably more like testifying and religious, more related songs. But what people forget too is that Juré, a lot of it was sung in French, but the majority of the people that were singing Juré music were not Catholic. They were Protestants, Baptists and Pentecostals and stuff. So that's where I relate to that music,
It's interesting because the name of it suggests that it might be religious, but a lot of the times the lyrics don't really have any religious content. Yeah, so you were singing about the snap beans not being salty, which is, I guess, a phrase that's really popular in Zydeco music. Could you talk about that phrase a little? Because people have,
I like to disagree with a lot of stuff, I love that. And I like to disagree with the norm, what I mean? Because like they say that the Zydeco sont pas salés, and I would suggest that you would talk to somebody like Blake Miller, Barry Ancelet, and even older black musicians that's been around that phrase longer. I'm not the one really to give you the real answer, but they say that it comes from, it was almost like a way of saying how are things going. Like comment ça va in French, you say comment les haricots, and les haricots sont pas salés would mean that the snap beans ain't salty, or the beans ain't salty, and that means things ain't going so good.
hard times.
But I never heard a song called Les Zydeco sont salés, so maybe someone should come up with one of those.
That's right.
And sing about why is things going good and what do you love about life. And then some people even say that Les Zydeco, this is something that's new to me. An old friend of mine back home told me this. He said that back in the old days when slaves would get together, they had gourds, and they put beans in the gourds, and they would sing Juré music and shake the gourds. And that's how they come up with it, something like that, part of where the Zydeco come from. Or
Interesting.
Like that. Some people say that they were sitting around singing and snapping beans. But if you look at Africans, I'm sure everything they did, they were probably singing. They probably were churning like butter singing, and there's no telling what, But when he told me that, I thought about it, and I said, dude, that makes so much sense,
And of course, one of the things that people say is that the genre name of Zydeco comes directly from that phrase, which was sung so often in these Juré songs, but it kind of can't be proven, really.
And then in the Caribbeans, you find people singing about his Zydeco too, these old recordings, and then some people believe that was metaphoric for like one's testicles, So you just never know what they're really singing about.
Right. Well, on that note.
I was gonna say something that sounded pretty painful, like snap. Snap beans. But
Yeah.
So many different, what's the word for it? So many different theories.
Theories and interpretations of that,
But I find that within this culture, there's only been a few people that really explained it, and I think some of them made that shit up.
Yeah, it is possible.
my opinion.
It is possible. And we actually have had Barry Ancelet here, and I think he did talk about it during his. So you referred us to him. You can find a video of Barry Ancelet on the Library of Congress website as well, talking about that. So, Yeah. So I think we've covered most of what we wanted to. So one last question for you, which is what's next for Cedric, for the trio, and for your groups, you think? Let's start with Cedric.
I'm a little pessimistic, so let's get them to say it first, whatever they feel. Okay, look, this has been a struggle for me, like playing music, period. Now, it got a lot to do with me just being unorganized and not really knowing much about the music business. And then it's, being that it's cultural and it's a part of your heritage, you feel like it's almost like being a gospel, it's almost like making a living off of being a preacher. Because it's like, you got this side, that's like the God side, and you got this side, we have to think about the physical world and the money.
Right.
You know? So it's kind of like, it's in between everything. So with me, I have a lot of mixed feelings about it. I don't want to really talk about like the real words I'm feeling. I don't think America want to hear that. But other than that, I'm just going to keep on trying to forge my way and keep doing what I'm doing and keep myself surrounded by musicians that can influence me and my real friends make me feel good. That's what makes the music good in the long run. And other than that, I ain't saying nothing else.
All right, well, we certainly wish you all the best because we've enjoyed the concert earlier today, and we know you're capable of continuing with great things, so we really hope to see more from you.